So there I was, Jake Morrison, sitting in my underwear, at 2 in the morning, mainlining energy drinks and failing spectacularly, at a boss fight I'd already died to 17 times. Because apparently, my life choices were as questionable as my parents' decision to leave me home alone during the worst blizzard in Minnesota history. Mom and Dad were off at their marriage counseling retreat, which was code for we're going to Vegas to either save our marriage or get matching divorces. They'd left me with a freezer full of Hot Pockets, stern warnings about not burning the house down, and the confident assumption that their 16-year-old son wouldn't do anything monumentally stupid. They clearly didn't know me very well. The wind outside was howling like my neighbor's chihuahua when the mailman shows up, and snow was piling up against the windows like nature was trying to bury our house alive. Perfect weather for staying inside and pretending I had a social life through online gaming. That's when I heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I paused my game, thinking maybe the storm had knocked a branch against the door, but then it came again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Followed by what sounded suspiciously like sobbing. "Oh come on," I muttered, pulling on yesterday's jeans. What kind of idiot is out in this weather? The scratching got more desperate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Followed by a muffled voice that definitely wasn't human. Well, it sounded human, but with this weird British accent that seemed way too fancy for anyone who'd be wandering around in a blizzard. "Please," came the voice through the door. "I'm absolutely perishing out here. This weather is simply dreadful, and I fear my extremities are developing rather concerning ice crystals." I crept to the front door, energy drink still in hand, and peered through the peephole. What I saw made me wonder if maybe I'd been hitting the caffeine a little too hard. There was a cat at my door. Well, sort of a cat. If cats were purple, had 6 legs, and were about the size of a golden retriever. And if they were currently covered in so much frost, they looked like they'd been dipped in glitter. The thing looked up at the peephole with these massive pleading eyes and said, in that ridiculously posh accent, "I can see your shadow, young man. I assure you I'm quite harmless and desperately in need of assistance." I stared through the peephole for a solid 10 seconds, waiting for my brain to catch up with reality. When it didn't, I figured I had 2 options. Either I was having the world's weirdest hallucination, or there was actually a talking alien cat freezing to death on my doorstep. Both possibilities seemed equally likely at this point in my life. "Okay," I said to the door. Because apparently I was the kind of person who had conversations with potentially imaginary frozen alien cats. "But if you're some kind of serial killer in a really elaborate costume, I want you to know I've got pepper spray." I didn't actually have pepper spray, but the frozen cat thing didn't need to know that. "I assure you murder is not on my agenda this evening," came the reply. "Though I cannot guarantee my survival much longer in these barbaric weather conditions." And that's how I ended up opening my front door at 2 in the morning, to let in what was definitely absolutely 100% an alien cat. Because clearly my parents were right about one thing, I was definitely going to do something monumentally stupid. The alien cat practically tumbled through my doorway in a heap of purple fur and melting frost, leaving a puddle on my mom's precious hardwood floors. I slammed the door shut against the howling wind and stood there staring down at what was definitely not a hallucination. Oh blessed warmth. The creature sighed, shaking ice crystals from its 6 legs like a dog after a bath. I thought I was going to become a rather undignified ice sculpture. As it thawed out, the thing started looking around my house with what I can only describe as barely disguised horror. Its whiskers twitched as it took in the pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, the energy drink cans scattered across every surface, and my impressive collection of dirty laundry draped over various pieces of furniture. "Good heavens," it muttered, picking its way delicately around a pile of my dad's sports magazines. The intelligence reports were clearly exaggerated. "This habitat is absolutely primitive." "Excuse me," I said, crossing my arms. "Intelligence reports." The cat froze, which was ironic, considering it had just finished unfreezing. "Ah, did I say intelligence reports? I meant weather reports." "Yes, the weather reports said your domicile was warmer." "Right, because that made total sense." The creature cleared its throat with a sound like a tiny engine starting up. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Commander Whiskers of the 3rd Galactic Fleet, Falling Division of the Intergalactic Federation of Slightly Superior Beings." I blinked at him. "Your name is actually Whiskers." "It's a translation issue," he said stiffly. "My actual name is roughly equivalent to your concept of he who judges harshly while maintaining impeccable grooming standards, but Whiskers will suffice." "Okay, Commander Whiskers," I said, because apparently this was my life now. "What exactly were you doing frozen to death on my doorstep?" Whiskers began grooming one of his 6 paws with a tongue that was definitely not cat normal, considering it was bright blue. If you must know, I was conducting routine surveillance of your species as part of our ongoing study into primitive civilizations. Primitive. I gestured around my living room. Dude. We have Netflix and pizza delivery. How is that primitive? You eat food that arrives in cardboard containers. Whiskers replied, as if this explained everything. You voluntarily watch moving pictures of other humans pretending to be different humans. And don't get me started on your inexplicable obsession with capturing images of your meals. He had a point about the food pictures, but I wasn't about to admit that. For the past 3 Earth years, Whiskers continued, now grooming what I was pretty sure was an antenna disguised as a whisker. I've been documenting human behavior patterns. Frankly, it's been rather disturbing. You creatures spend enormous amounts of time staring at small rectangular devices, you willingly consume beverages that could probably power spacecraft, and you've somehow convinced yourselves that arguing with strangers through electronic messages constitutes social interaction. That's called modern society, I said defensively. That's called deeply concerning, Whiskers retorted. My report was going to recommend immediate intervention before you accidentally destroy yourselves with your own incompetence. I stared at this 6-legged purple cat who had just spent the last few minutes insulting my entire species while dripping alien cat water on my mom's floors. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You're an alien spy who's been watching us for 3 years, and your conclusion is that we're too stupid to live. Whiskers tilted his head, considering this. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound rather harsh. But yes, essentially correct. Great. First contact with an alien species, and I get the galaxy's most judgmental cat. I was just starting to process the fact that I was having a philosophical debate about human civilization with an alien cat, when Whiskers suddenly went rigid. All 6 of his legs locked up, his antenna whiskers started twitching like crazy, and his eyes went wide. Oh blast and bother, he muttered, which sounded way too polite for what was clearly an oh crap moment. What's wrong? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I didn't want to know. Whiskers started pacing back and forth on his 6 legs, which looked like the world's weirdest tap dance routine. I may have been somewhat economical with the truth regarding my current circumstances. Economical with the truth. I raised an eyebrow. You mean you lied? Lying is such an ugly word, Whiskers said, now grooming himself frantically. I prefer to think of it as strategic information management. I sat down on the couch, suddenly feeling like I needed to be sitting for whatever was coming next. Okay, Commander Whiskers. Hit me with the unstrategically managed information. He stopped pacing and looked at me with what I was starting to recognize as his "you're not going to like this" expression. The truth is, I'm not exactly here on official business. I'm what you might call a fugitive. A fugitive. My voice cracked like I was going through puberty all over again. What did you do, steal alien catnip? Worse, Whiskers said grimly. I stole the Federation's entire database of human intelligence research. 3 years' worth of classified data on your species. I stared at him. But you just said we were primitive and stupid. Why would anyone want to steal research about stupid people? Whiskers looked genuinely uncomfortable now, which was impressive considering he was a 6-legged purple cat. Well, you see, that's rather the point. The research I conducted, it proves that humans aren't primitive at all. What? Your species is actually the most advanced in the known galaxy, he said quickly, like ripping off a band-aid. The Federation has been deliberately classifying you as primitive to prevent widespread panic among the other member species. My brain did that thing where it just stops working for a few seconds, like when you try to divide by 0. Run that by me again. Whiskers sighed heavily. Humans are terrifying, Jake. You adapt to anything. You solve problems by throwing yourselves at them until something works, and you have this absolutely bonkers ability to cooperate with complete strangers when things get bad. Do you have any idea how many galactic civilizations spend centuries just figuring out how to share resources with their neighbors? But we fight wars all the time. Small-scale territorial disputes. Whiskers waved a paw dismissively. Meanwhile, when one of your cities gets hit by a natural disaster, humans from the other side of the planet show up with supplies and rescue dogs. It's completely unnatural behavior for an intelligent species. I was starting to get a headache. So let me get this straight. The galactic government has been lying to everyone about how awesome humans are. Essentially, yes. If other species knew the truth, they'd either want to recruit you as allies or eliminate you as a threat. The Federation decided it was easier to just keep everyone in the dark and leave you alone. And you stole the proof of this. Whiskers nodded miserably. I thought the galaxy deserved to know the truth. Unfortunately, the Federation disagrees. They've classified me as a rogue agent and sent a task force to retrieve me. As if on cue, a low humming sound started coming from outside. Through the window, I could see strange lights moving through the blizzard. Please tell me those are snowplows, I said, even though I knew they weren't. Whiskers looked out the window, and his fur stood on end. I'm afraid not. It appears my former colleagues have found me. The humming got louder, and the lights got brighter. So I said, trying to keep my voice steady, what exactly happens if they catch you? Whiskers looked at me with those big alien eyes. Let's just say the Federation has a very permanent solution to information security problems. Great. So now I wasn't just harboring an alien fugitive. I was harboring an alien fugitive who'd stolen state secrets and was about to get us both killed by alien space cops. My parents were definitely going to kill me, assuming I lived long enough for them to find out. The humming outside was getting louder, and the weird lights were definitely not snowplows. They looked more like someone had strapped disco balls to flying refrigerators and decided to throw the galaxy's worst rave in my front yard. Okay, I said, trying to channel every action movie I'd ever seen. What's the plan here, Commander? Do we fight them? Do we hide? Do we surrender and hope they're the reasonable type of alien overlords? Whiskers was now pressed against the window, watching the ships with the intensity of a cat watching a laser pointer. Fighting is inadvisable. They have plasma cannons. Hiding is impossible. They have thermal scanners. And surrendering. He shuddered. Let's just say the Federation doesn't believe in lengthy trials. Great options, I muttered. Fight and die, hide and die, or surrender and die. I'm starting to see why you went rogue. One of the ships was hovering directly over our house now, casting everything in this eerie blue light that made my living room look like the inside of an alien autopsy room, which, given the current situation, felt a little too on the nose. There is one possibility, Whiskers said slowly, turning away from the window. But it would require your assistance, and I'm afraid it's rather dangerous. More dangerous than sitting here waiting for alien space cops to vaporize us. Point taken. Whiskers started pacing again, which I was beginning to realize was his version of stress eating. The data I stole isn't just sitting in some computer file. It's been encoded into a quantum storage device that's currently integrated with my neural pathways. I stared at him. You mean the alien government secrets are literally in your head? Precisely. Which means the only way to release the information is through a direct neural interface with a compatible transmission system. He looked at me hopefully. Your species has been broadcasting electromagnetic signals into space for decades. Surely you have the technology to help me transmit the data. Dude, I'm 16. I don't have access to NASA's communications array. What about your educational institutions? Don't they have broadcast capabilities for emergency communications? I thought about that for a second. You mean like the radio tower at my school, the one they use for snow day announcements and football game broadcasts? Whiskers' eyes lit up like I'd just offered him a lifetime supply of space tuna. That could work. A simple radio transmission would be sufficient to broadcast the data to every receiver on your planet. Once it's public knowledge, the Federation won't be able to suppress it. The humming outside was joined by what sounded like alien voices using some kind of loudspeaker. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was definitely in the surrender now or face the consequences category. Okay, I said, grabbing my winter coat from the closet. Let's say I help you get to the school. What happens after we broadcast your alien WikiLeaks? Won't they just shoot the transmission down or something? They can't risk it, Whiskers explained, following me toward the back door. If even one human receives the transmission, the information will spread through your communication networks faster than they can contain it. Your species has this remarkable tendency to share information compulsively. You mean like social media? Exactly. Within hours, every human on the planet would know the truth. The Federation would have no choice but to acknowledge it officially. We crept toward the back door, staying low and avoiding the windows. The alien voices outside were getting more insistent, and I was pretty sure I heard the word surrender translated into something that sounded threatening in any language. There's just one problem, I whispered as we reached the door. The school is like 2 miles away. It's the middle of a blizzard, and there are alien spaceships hunting us. How exactly are we supposed to get there? Whiskers grinned, showing teeth that were definitely not standard cat equipment. Leave that to me. I may be a fugitive, but I'm still a Federation officer. I have a few tricks they don't know about. He pressed something on what I'd thought was just a fancy collar, and suddenly his purple fur shifted color, matching the white of the snow outside. Then he did something even weirder. He started growing. Not a lot, but enough that he went from golden retriever-sized to something more like a small pony. Adaptive camouflage and emergency size adjustment, he explained casually. Like this was totally normal. Standard equipment for deep cover operations. I can carry you, and they won't be able to track us visually in the storm. I stared at him. You can turn into a snow-colored alien horse cat, and you didn't mention this earlier. You didn't ask. Whiskers lowered himself so I could climb on his back. Besides, it has a limited power supply. We'll have maybe 20 minutes before I revert to normal size and coloring. The back door opened quietly, and we slipped out into the blizzard. The wind hit me like a frozen sledgehammer, and I immediately understood why Whiskers had been desperate to get inside earlier. This wasn't just cold. This was the kind of cold that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. Hold on tight, Whiskers whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. And try not to fall off. I'd rather not explain to the Federation why I'm carrying a human pancake. We started moving through the snow, and I had to admit, for a six-legged alien cat horse thing, Whiskers was surprisingly smooth to ride. We moved like ghosts through the storm, staying in the shadows, and avoiding the searchlights from the ships overhead. You know, I said quietly, as we made our way toward the school. A few hours ago, my biggest problem was figuring out how to explain to my parents why I spent their entire grocery budget on energy drinks. And now you're helping an alien fugitive expose an intergalactic conspiracy, Whiskers replied. I'd say that's quite an upgrade in terms of life experience. Yeah, well, assuming we don't die horribly, this is definitely going to make an interesting college application essay. Behind us, I could hear the Federation ships searching the house, their alien voices getting increasingly frustrated. Ahead of us, barely visible through the snow, I could make out the outline of Roosevelt High School. Almost there, Whiskers said. Now comes the hard part. The hard part, I laughed, but it came out more like a nervous cough. What do you call what we just did? The easy part, Whiskers replied grimly. Now we have to break into your school, access the radio equipment, and broadcast galactic state secrets while avoiding capture by a Federation task force. I thought about that for a moment. You know what? Forget the college essay. If we pull this off, I'm writing a book. Breaking into Roosevelt High turned out to be embarrassingly easy. Not because we were master burglars or anything, but because our janitor, Mr. Peterson, had apparently forgotten to lock the side door again. I made a mental note to never complain about his forgetfulness again, assuming I lived long enough to see him on Monday. The hallways of my school looked completely different in the dark. Without the usual chaos of teenagers, lockers slamming, and teachers yelling about hall passes, the place felt like a ghost town. Our footsteps echoed weirdly, and every shadow looked like it might be hiding alien commandos. The radio equipment is in the media center, I whispered to Whiskers, who had shrunk back to his normal size once we got inside. His camouflage was still holding, but he looked like a walking snow sculpture in the dim hallway lighting. Excellent, he replied, pulling out what looked like a tiny crystalline cube from somewhere in his fur. This contains the entire database. Once we connect it to your transmission equipment, it will automatically encode and broadcast the information. We made it halfway to the media center before everything went sideways. The front doors of the school exploded inward with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the hallway was filled with the most ridiculous sight I'd ever seen. Picture this 6-foot-tall cats walking on their hind legs, wearing what looked like space armor designed by someone who'd never actually seen armor before. They had these elaborate helmets with way too many antennas, and they were carrying weapons that looked like someone had crossed a laser pointer with a leaf blower. Federation security forces, Whiskers muttered. I was hoping they'd send the negotiation team first. They have a negotiation team, I hissed as we ducked behind a row of lockers. Not really, it's mostly just Commander Fluffington giving a lengthy speech about the importance of following orders before ordering everyone executed. As if on cue, one of the armored cat aliens stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded like it was being broadcast through a microphone made of pure condescension. Commander Whiskers of the 3rd Galactic Fleet, the voice boomed through the hallway. You are charged with theft of classified materials, unauthorized disclosure of state secrets, and the heinous crime of making the Federation look foolish. Surrender immediately, and your execution will be relatively painless. That's Commander Fluffington, Whiskers whispered. My former superior. He's about as reasonable as he sounds. Relatively painless, I whispered back. What does that even mean? You don't want to know. Commander Fluffington continued his speech, apparently enjoying the sound of his own voice. You have 30 Earth seconds to surrender yourself and return the stolen data, or we will be forced to take extreme measures. What kind of extreme measures? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know. My question was answered when one of the Federation soldiers pointed his weapon at a row of lockers and fired. The lockers didn't explode or melt or anything dramatic like that. They just ceased to exist. 1 second they were there. The next second there was empty space. Molecular disintegrators, Whiskers explained helpfully. They remove things from existence at the atomic level. Very thorough. Very permanent. Okay, I said, my voice cracking again. New plan. We run really fast. We bolted down the hallway toward the media center, with the sound of alien cat soldiers stomping after us in their ridiculous armor. Behind us, I could hear Commander Fluffington shouting orders that sounded like they involved a lot of disintegrating. 20 seconds, Fluffington announced. 19, 18. We burst through the media center doors, and I immediately started looking for the radio controls while Whiskers fumbled with his data cube thing. The equipment looked a lot more complicated in the dark when I was running on pure adrenaline and terror. There, I pointed to the main console. That's the transmission board. But I don't know how to work it. No problem, Whiskers said, his cube starting to glow. The data will interface directly with any electromagnetic transmission system. Just turn something on. I started flipping switches randomly, hoping I wouldn't accidentally broadcast dead air, or worse, the time our chemistry teacher had that embarrassing accident with the Bunsen burner. 10 seconds, came Fluffington's voice from the hallway. 9, 8. The radio equipment hummed to life just as the media center doors exploded inward. Commander Fluffington strutted in, flanked by his ridiculous cat soldiers, looking exactly like what you'd expect if you took a house cat. Made it 6 feet tall, gave it opposable thumbs, and an attitude problem the size of Jupiter. 7, 6, he continued counting, apparently committed to finishing his countdown. 5, 4. Wait, I shouted, stepping between Whiskers and the Federation forces. Before you disintegrate us, don't you want to know why he stole the data? Fluffington paused his countdown, looking annoyed. I suppose you're going to tell me some ridiculous story about exposing the truth for the greater good of the galaxy. Actually, yeah, I said. That's exactly what I'm going to tell you. How tediously predictable. Fluffington examined his claws with bored superiority. Very well, human child. Speak your piece. It will make no difference, but it might provide some amusement before we eliminate you both. Behind me, I could hear Whiskers connecting his cube to the radio equipment. I needed to buy him time. Here's what I don't understand, I said, trying to channel every debate class I'd ever slept through. If humans are really as primitive and stupid as you claim, why are you so worried about us finding out the truth? Fluffington's whiskers twitched. We're not worried. We're simply maintaining galactic stability. By lying to everyone. By preventing panic. Panic about what? I pressed. About humans being awesome. About us being better at cooperation and problem solving than anyone else in the galaxy. You are not better. Fluffington exploded, his composure finally cracking. You're chaotic. You're unpredictable. You solve problems by throwing yourselves at them like demented missiles. You cooperate with complete strangers for no logical reason. You create art about your own suffering and call it entertainment. Behind him, his soldiers were nodding along like they'd heard this rant before. You're absolutely terrifying. Fluffington continued. Do you have any idea what other species think when they hear that humans will voluntarily run toward explosions to help people they've never met? Or that you'll spend your own resources to save animals that serve no practical purpose? Or that you've somehow managed to create a global communication system that you primarily use to share pictures of small mammals? You mean memes. I mean madness. Fluffington was pacing now, gesticulating wildly with his armored paws. Your species shouldn't work. You should have destroyed yourselves centuries ago. But instead, you just keep adapting and cooperating, and creating things that shouldn't be possible. That's when I realized something important. You're not trying to protect the galaxy from us, I said slowly. You're trying to protect yourselves from the galaxy finding out that you're not the most advanced species anymore. Fluffington went completely still. Behind him, his soldiers looked uncomfortable. That's it, isn't it? I continued. The Federation has been running things for so long that you can't admit there might be someone better at this whole civilization thing. We are the most advanced, Fluffington began. Really? Because from where I'm standing, the most advanced species in the galaxy wouldn't need to lie about a bunch of primitive humans to maintain their authority. Fluffington opened his mouth to respond, but that's when Whiskers' cube finished downloading into the radio system. Transmission complete, Whiskers announced. The data is now broadcasting on all available frequencies. Fluffington stared at the radio equipment in horror. No. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yeah, I said, grinning despite the molecular disintegrators pointed at my face. We just broke the universe. Through the windows, I could see the Federation ships outside starting to light up like Christmas trees as they received the transmission. In the distance, I could hear car radios, emergency broadcasts, and cell phone alerts starting to go off as the data spread through every communication system on Earth. The truth is out there now, Whiskers said quietly. Literally, it's everywhere. Fluffington looked like he was about to have a complete breakdown. The galaxy is going to demand answers. The Council is going to want explanations. Other species are going to want to make contact. This is going to be absolute chaos. Yeah, I said, still grinning. Isn't it great? For a moment the media center was completely silent, except for the sound of alien technology frantically beeping, and the distant noise of every communication device on Earth suddenly getting very busy. Fluffington stood there staring at the radio equipment, like it had personally insulted his mother, while his soldiers shuffled around looking like they wished they'd called in sick today. Then my phone started buzzing. Not just buzzing, it was having a complete electronic seizure. Text messages, social media notifications, news alerts, and calls were coming in so fast that the screen looked like it was having a rave. Oh no, Whiskers said, looking at my phone. I may have underestimated your species' capacity for information distribution. I looked at the screen. In the 30 seconds since the transmission had started, the hashtag AlienCatGate was already trending worldwide. Someone had already made a meme using Fluffington's face. The president was apparently calling an emergency press conference, and my mom had texted me 17 times asking if I'd remembered to feed the fish. This is a disaster, Fluffington moaned, slumping against the doorframe. The council is going to demote me to sanitation duty on Garbage Planet 7. Actually, I said, scrolling through the responses on my phone, I think you might be wrong about the whole disaster thing. The reactions flooding in weren't panic or fear like Fluffington had predicted. They were exactly what you'd expect from humanity when faced with something completely insane. There were conspiracy theorists claiming they'd known all along. There were people making jokes about finally having an explanation for Cat's superiority complex. There were scientists demanding to speak to alien managers. And there were approximately 12 million cat videos being shared with captions like, "Are you my alien overlord?" Look at this, I said, showing Whiskers my phone. Someone already started a GoFundMe to build a welcome center for alien refugees. It's already raised $50,000. Whiskers peered at the screen. Remarkable, I predicted widespread hysteria and societal collapse. Nah, I said, we're too busy making memes to panic properly. That's when something interesting happened. Fluffington's soldiers started putting down their weapons and pulling out their own communication devices. Apparently, the galactic internet was just as chaotic as Earth's, and news of the data leak was spreading through alien social media faster than you could say intergalactic incident. Sir, one of the soldiers said nervously, we're getting messages from 17 different species, requesting immediate diplomatic contact with Earth. The Andromedan Trade Consortium wants to discuss economic partnerships. The crystal beings of Zeltar want to compare philosophical notes, and the hive mind of Proxima wants to. Apparently they want to start a book club. A book club, Fluffington squeaked. They're fascinated by human literature, something about our capacity for emotional complexity and narrative innovation. I looked at Whiskers. Did you put that in your report? I may have mentioned your species' peculiar habit of creating elaborate fictional scenarios for entertainment purposes, he admitted. I found it quite remarkable that you voluntarily experience emotional distress through storytelling. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number I didn't recognize, with a caller ID that just said Galactic Council Urgent. Should I answer that? I asked. Might as well, Fluffington sighed. My career is already over. How much worse can it get? I put the call on speaker. A voice that sounded like it was being translated through 17 different languages spoke up. Is this Jake Morrison, the human who assisted in the release of classified Federation data? Yes, I said, suddenly wondering if intergalactic war crimes were a thing. Excellent. This is High Counselor Zephyria of the Galactic Council. We've been reviewing the information that was just broadcast, and we have a proposition for your species. Fluffington made a sound like a deflating balloon. We would like to formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Council as a full member species, the voice continued. Your capacity for adaptive problem-solving and interspecies cooperation is exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Really, I said, trying to process the fact that I was apparently conducting interplanetary diplomacy in my high school media center at 3 in the morning. Really, We've been looking for a species capable of mediating disputes between our more traditional members. Your Commander Whiskers' report suggests that humans excel at finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. I looked at Whiskers, who was grinning so wide I could see all of his very non-cat-like teeth. There is one condition, the High Counselor added.